A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this 65th edition of the Together for Education webinars brought to you by Notebook. Once again, for people who are joining us for the first time this year, we wish you all a very, very happy new year. After the year we have just had, we know we deserve a good one. Months ago, back in April 2020, when we had started this series of webinars, we had started something with the view of having our educators more accustomed to online learning methods. Zoom was quickly gaining prominence, and we figured this was an interesting way to have a conversation started with educators across the country. Little did we know that this would take a life of its own, and over the last few months, it's been the most humbling and the most amazing journey to see week after week fantastic educators and thought leaders turn up on this platform and share their thoughts and opinions with us. For that, we thank each and every one of you for your sustained support. We at Notebook are an EdTech organization. We create small videos tailored to the school curriculum. These videos are available both to the teachers as part of their online or offline classes, as well as to the students when they want to revise the topics at home. So the teacher, when they're taking a class, play this video as an introduction to a particular topic, and back at home, the student accesses the same videos on their smartphones or laptops to have a better understanding of the topic. Today, we touch upon a very important topic that's very close to our hearts here at Notebook, nurturing explorers. Here, we are talking about explorers on the ocean of knowledge. We are talking about the field of research. When we were in school ages ago, it was not very common for research to be seen as part of our learning process. Learning, unfortunately, was by and large rote learning. However, things have changed. Today, our education system, particularly the school education system, takes cognizance of the fact that research is an essential ingredient of the learning process. We at Notebook had also embarked on a journey of research when we first started. One of the things that we wanted to ensure was that Notebook videos carry the maximum amount of engagement. Well, a lot of 3D animation was already in vogue, but what we figured out from our research was that storytelling, along with rich graphics, especially that look like that ones from a comic book, actually create the maximum amount of engagement and retention with students. Thus was born our method of augmented storytelling. What I will do now is play a short sample of one of the Notebook videos to show you the kind of work we do before we start the session for today.
This is Barababu, the head accountant, and this is Amos. He has newly joined the tea estate as an assistant to Barababu. Barababu has been the head accountant for many years in the estate. He will retire in the next year and is all set to train Amos with all his deliverables. So students, along with Amos, we too will learn today.
Good morning, Amos. Have you done ledger postings?
Oh yes, Barababu, I have done ledger posting in my exams.
And how did you know that they were correct?
I used to ensure that the sum of all debits would equal to the sum of all credits.
And why so?
Because the basic principle of accounting says that for every debit there should be an equal credit.
Correct. And this check brings us to the concept of trial balance.
Yes, I have learnt trial balances in my class, but want to know more about it.
Yes, but before that, tell me your understanding.
A statement which shows the balances of all debits and credits of the complete set of ledgers to verify the arithmetical accuracy of the respective ledger postings is known as the trial balance.
True. In a practical scenario, the final accounts preparation starts with the trial balance. A correct trial simplifies the preparation of the final statement of accounts, as we do not need to go through the entire set of ledgers.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was a short snippet of one of the Notebook videos. Notebook today has more than 10,000 such videos catering to class 1 to class 12 of the CBSE curriculum. Well, with that out of the way, it is now time to move on to the session at hand. Our first speaker today is Mr. Phillip Barrett. Mr. Barrett retired as the deputy headmaster from the illustrious Doon School in Dehradun after 44 years of serving in education across various institutions. Mr. Burrett served the Doon School as housemaster, head of department, dean of activities, dean of student welfare, deputy headmaster, second master, and acting headmaster with great distinction. He also carried out a visioning exercise for the Doon School in the year 2011 through an in-depth study of a number of British public schools and various schools in the US. Mr. Burrett also qualified as a leadership trainer at Wellington College, UK in the year 2000. He is also an athlete, an adventurer, and a naturalist. Sir, privileged to have you with us. Over to you.
Very much, Shabayu. I hope I am audible and visible enough.
Yes, sir. We can see you, we can hear you clearly.
A very good evening to you, Achin, and Abhishek, and Shabayu, and the entire notebook team. Also, very good evening to Mrs. Ahmed, Mrs. Razdan, Mr. Mulchandani, and our guests who've tuned in. So I think Shabayu took the words out of my mouth when he talked about early schooling. So when I went to school, teachers either lectured or they gave notes. And we patiently took these notes down or we listened to them. There was very little else that could be done. And of course, apart from a little assigned work, a minimal interactive discussion that went on. But basically, the teacher had all the data and all the information. And we did not have access to this information except if we went to the library. And again, the problem with libraries were that there were not enough reference books and there were not enough copies of books that we could take home. And therefore, the teacher became the almighty power in the class. And without the teacher's knowledge and information, we would never have passed exams because they had information on the tips of their fingers. Now, the thing is that today, things have changed. We have access to the worldwide net, and a teacher is no longer the major source of information. He can now get on with the more important jobs of questioning, eliciting, assessing, discussing, and interacting with children, rather than just, speak volumes and wax eloquent. Today, with information available to all, teachers can resort to allowing children to explore and discover for themselves what is it that they most love. Teachers thus turn into mentors, guides, counselors, motivators, and coaches. Now, what we need to do is to tap into the child's innate sense of curiosity and inquisitiveness. We need to develop the wow of learning. Just watch how children enjoy treasure hunts, paper chases, paper trails, where clues are written and left behind for them to follow, and finally, which leads to the treasure. When one sets children tasks to do on their own and trusts that they will do it, they thrive, deliver, and learn a lot. So when I taught geography in class 12, almost all my life, children loved doing the surveys that we were set because I would give them the instructions, give them the equipment, and let them alone for 3 hours. And they would muck around and they would come out with, amazing surveys. And just to see that the survey was correct when they finally did all the measurements was so gratifying, and they got so much pleasure out of all this. And the enthusiasm that you see in children when you give them a village survey to do, for example, where we take them out and we give them a questionnaire, we develop this questionnaire with them, but when they do the questionnaire and come back and start logging in what they have found, it's so gratifying. Now, a history teacher friend of mine was teaching how anthropologists obtain clues as to how ancient tribes and societies, we learn about societies through archaeological digs. Now, what he did was he asked the class to do their own archaeological excavation and write down their research. Now, this was primary research of the best form. Now, what we did was we let the children go into the area behind the workshop in school, and they actually dug deep pits. And they discovered old plugs, wire, matchboxes, bottle covers, razor blades, pen caps, and all other articles which 20th century man discards. Now, if people 100 years from now had to do this dig, they would come up with research on how we lived 100 years ago. And children learned how archaeologists discover ancient tribes by actually making a dig. Research, it is first-hand research. Now, children love working in groups and they love learning from other children. That is why classroom furniture has changed over the decades. Today, classroom furniture is light and movable. It's not like those heavy oak desks that were in one place when we were in school. Because children need to be allowed to move around, stimulate their the kinesthetic abilities, interact, talk, read, and come and discuss. Now, when I was at Doon, and we turned into the IB system, and we were not the first school to actually go down this road, certainly not. We hoped that the Indian boards would wake up and introduce more research-based learning because there was still a lot of rote learning going on. Now, rote learning did make up 80% of the exam. And there was a very small part, a 20-mark component, which was given to a project that really didn't demand much research. Many students could actually buy these ready-made projects from the market as there was such a strong demand for these plagiarized bits of paper. Now, project research work really prepares a student to face college when he goes there later on. And individual research is important. Now, there is nothing like discovering something for yourself and the joy of plowing through reference material, organizing this matter into decent research projects. It gives you enormous pleasure on a personal level. Also, these research projects are all original. There is no question of copying someone else's work. A research student has to develop for himself a research question, which is uniquely different from other students' questions. And therefore, it cuts down this whole idea of copying, plagiarism, and there's no copying of work. Now, after the student has done the individual research, he can then be assessed on it, and each assessment will differ from assessment of other students. Let's take a topic on pollution, which can be set for a class. But every student might take up a different aspect of pollution and carry out his own individual research. And how do we teach and how do we encourage children to research? Now, as I said earlier, it doesn't take much to get children excited about research. They love it. All it needs is for their teachers to guide them through the early steps and trust that they will do the work. The first thing is get a student to pick a topic that interests them, which is relevant to their lives. This is where the current education system fails because we thrust a ready-made syllabus onto children that doesn't mean much to them. They've had no say in designing this syllabus. But when a kid is passionate about something, he will go to extreme measures to find out more. I've heard children talk about dinosaurs, space travel, reptiles, and do a lot of research on it, even though they were not being tested. So the first thing is get something that interests the child. Now, the rights of young people to be heard and to participate in society is a part of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. Children often have the answers to the problems of the world, and that we may not have as adults. They have a different take on the world. Greta Thunberg, for example. We need to listen to what children have to say. Now, just as the IB and IGC exams, and all schools, in fact, in the future will have to, after the new education policy, introduce curriculums that the children will have to work out for themselves. The new education policy talks about a freedom, a flexibility in choosing what you want. Now, in a good history syllabus, a child may design which era, which topics he wants to take. And that is what is different from the current system. we don't have a set syllabus. Children can actually work out their own syllabus, which again, the school might have to pass. The biggest issue of any research is to find a research question. And the students need to be helped by their teacher to formulate this research question, which shouldn't be too broad, yet not too narrow. For example, agriculture in India is too broad a topic. Oil seeds in India might be a little better. Vanilla farming in Kerala is better still. But how pepper cultivation improved the standard of living in the Vaigat district of Kerala between 1998 and 2000 would be an ideal topic. It's small enough, detailed enough, especially if the children come from that area where the research is being done. Now, what needs to be done also is constant guidance and reviewing of the project as it goes along. I think it's wrong for the teacher to forget about the children and then after 6 months say projects in. I think there should be constant classes once a week where a teacher looks at how the progress is going on. Next is, I think the teacher needs to supply a lot of resources, websites, additional data without spoon feeding the child. I think it's like putting your hand on the child, giving him something that he needs to chew on. Also, I think children need to be taught how to research and how to reference. There are many types of referencing. They need to be taught how to reference their work. Also, they need to be taught that Google is not the only search engine. There are other sites that you look at. Then there are other areas that we need to go. Also, children need to learn that the first site is not the only one. They need to look and compare different hits and also sift between data. Books are sometimes better than the internet because books can be written on specific subjects and are often pitched at the right age level for a child. Sometimes the web may not be, they may use words and vocabulary that children don't understand. And that's the duty of schools to try and teach children how to use a library, how to find the book that they're looking for, how to reference the work that they do. Also, I think teachers need to help students develop the art of note taking and speed reading or scanning, as they put. They need to scan over each site and just see what is relevant for their research paper. In contrast to the past, where there was very little data available to the teacher and the students, today, on the contrary, there's too much information available. And it can be confusing, upsetting, and also very, mind-boggling for these children. Therefore, teachers need to help children to sift data and take what is relevant. There's a lot of talk being done on the evils of plagiarism. And I think children should be taught by their teachers how to check for plagiarism and how children need to develop their own way of putting things across. Finally, after these research papers are handed in, there's so much fun in the assessment, which might consist of a student having to address the class, present his work, or even face a panel of teachers who question him on his research paper. There's so much fun in research. I think in the years to come, and with the new education policy, where children are allowed to select their own subjects, there'll be much more freedom. And of course, they can select their own syllabus in that subject. I think research-oriented work is going to come in a big way and is coming to stay. And with that, thank you very much for listening. And over to you, Shubai.
Thank you so much, sir. Like every other week, it's always best to open with you. And given a topic like research, the kind of research you have done on research, I think is wonderful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we now move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Achin Bhattacharya. Achin is the founder and CEO at Notebook. A chartered accountant by training, Achin was a director at Deloitte prior to starting Notebook. He has worked in India and abroad in various senior capacities in GE, PwC, KPMG, and Deloitte. He is a fellow of the ICAI and a member of CP Australia. He is also the recipient of the prestigious Indian Achievers Award. Achin is an avid reader and a passionate traveler with keen interests in economics, history, literature, and philosophy. He is a regular speaker at various forums and chambers of commerce and also contributes articles to numerous publications regularly. He is also on the board of some of the most renowned corporates and contributes significantly to their brand strategies. Achin, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Shubha, am I audible?
Yeah, Achin, loud and clear.
I once again welcome all of you to today's session on a topic which is very important as it defines the future trajectory of the human race. Now, as I move forward with my deliberation, I'll emphasize on three aspects. To start with, we'll discuss about the impact. Moving on, we'll discuss about how NEP 2020 has laid emphasis on this particular aspect. And last, and most important, the role of schools and esteemed educators in nurturing research. Now, coming to impact, let's remember the greatest exploration by human being. Recently, I was going through some reports with regard to important events and with regard to some of man's greatest achievements till date. Number of surveys in this direction has pointed to one single achievement. Definitely, there have been a lot of incidents which have assumed historical significance, some of them local, some of them global. But if there is one incident, one event, which has really shaped the global order, which has really stretched the imagination of human beings. 50 years ago, NASA did the impossible. It landed a man on the moon and safely they came back. It took hundreds of thousands of people and billions of dollars, but they achieved one of the greatest milestones in human history. Now, the dramatic moment temporarily, if you look at the impact, we can all go on to argue that there were a number of problems in our planet itself, and still many of them are there. So much of hunger, so much of poverty, so much of inequality. Then spending billions of dollars on an endeavor like this, what did it achieve? The dramatic moment temporarily united a nation which was divided by the Vietnam War, boosted US in its geopolitical clash with the Soviets, and opened up the imaginative possibilities of human spaceflight for an entire world. Indeed, some 600 million people around the globe watched the footage of Mr. Armstrong's giant leap for mankind. It even gave the world a new cultural metaphor. Prior to the feat, the phrase, "It's like landing on the moon," referred to something that couldn't be done. Afterward, it meant that which, with enough effort, humanity could achieve. Now, if you look at things since the dawn of humanity, moon always occupied a central place in our consciousness. Unlike other planetary bodies, like stars that we see, moon appeared as more than a pinprick of light in the sky, inviting us to imagine it as another world. It has been the source of infinite mythologies. I remember in one Buddhist tale, a hare that sacrifices itself to feed a hungry priest is honored by its likeness being etched in the moon's surface for all to see. Khonsu, the ancient Egyptian moon god, was thought to watch over those who travel at night. Similar mythologies exist across cultures, including a lot of literature in our own great nation. The moon was long seen as perfect, its dark markings explained through legends and other stories. Galileo's closer examination of the moon revealed its imperfections, and humanity's view took on a new dimension, an object worthy of scientific study. Now, despite humanity's long-held fascination with the moon and the scientific potential of sending a person there, NASA targeted the planetary body for another reason. So now we are discussing about the impact. And what was the other reason? To put to rest the everlasting debate about the global hierarchy. It was a power struggle. The US and Soviets were engaged in a global struggle for dominance. Everything was competition, and space emerged as one of the most visible and prestigious battlegrounds in this fight. Now, the US was already lagging. If you look at when this moon landing happened, prior to that, it was already lagging in the space race. Soviets has launched Sputnik in, I guess, 1957. But the nation that landed on the moon would gain an important edge in its quest to lead the world into the future. One of the most famous, iconic addresses by President Kennedy, I remember reading about it. He said, "We choose to go to the moon." In his address in Houston, in a university, Rice University, he said, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they're easy, but because they're hard." If you look at the financial hit, Washington pumped more than 4% of its federal budget into NASA in the early years of Apollo program. Now, how does 4% measure to today's spend? Today, by comparison, the space agency accounts for about 0.5% of the federal budget. The project cost was around $25 billion. It employed more than 4 lakh people working day and night. 3 astronauts sacrificed their life when a fire broke out in the spacecraft during training. Still, before the decade was over, the astronauts planted an American flag on the moon in 1969. They started this endeavor in 1961. So within a decade, they achieved this. Now, what did they achieve? So much of funding going into it, huge euphoria. But the dividend of that achievement, I believe, is something that they have enjoyed since last so many years. Before the Apollo program, if you look at, and even if you look at it from a scientific perspective, that was a political angle. If you look at it from the scientific perspective, the kind of debate, the origin of moon was an enigma. Some scientists thought it was a simple asteroid drawn into orbit by Earth's gravitational pull. Others surmised it was a world of its own. But Apollo discoveries brought geologists to a scientific consensus that the body probably formed when a Mars-sized planet smashed into Earth, sending rocks and dust from both the worlds into an orbit. Thus, these debris came together and formed the moon. What the Apollo program did was convert the moon from an object of fascination to a place which we could explore. Thus, the contribution. Now, if you look at this one single incident, the impact, we discussed about the impact. My objective was that when we discuss about exploration, when we discuss about research, when we discuss about, people really working towards something new, unique, innovation, the contribution of researchers and their research in our lives cannot be ignored. Even in recent times, over last 1 year, when all of us were struggling to cope with the pandemic, the only ray of hope was that some scientist in some corner of the globe working on his or her lab will find a remedy which will help all of us to get back to our good old ways of life. Now, looking at the new education policy acknowledges, and the best part of NEP with regard to research is that it clearly acknowledges that knowledge creation and research are critical in growing and sustaining a large and vibrant economy, in uplifting the society, inspiring the nation to achieve greater heights. Indeed, very aptly, it has been recognized that some of the most prosperous civilizations, now through the ages, whether it be in ancient times or in today's modern era, have been strong knowledge societies that attained intellectual and material wealth in large part through celebrated and fundamental contributions to new knowledge in the realm of science as well as art, language, and culture that enhanced and uplifted not only their own civilizations but others around the globe. So when we discuss about research, we're not only discussing about scientific research, but also other very important aspects about culture, art, language, equally important. Now, the policy clearly acknowledges that if India is to become a leader in the coming decades and try to achieve our true potential, our true demographic potential, vast talent pool, then we need to become a knowledge society in the coming decade. Thus, the nation will require significant expansion of its research capabilities and output across discipline. Now, this is also a step in the right direction. Undoubtedly, I congratulate the policymakers. But today, if you look at real numbers, right? Today, if you look at real numbers, let us compare the kind of budget outlays for research among some, vis-a-vis what we spend, vis-a-vis what some of the leading nations spend. For instance, US spends 2.8% of its GDP, 2.8% of its GDP on research, right? Israel, roughly more than 4%. South Korea, more than 4%. India's spend on research and innovation is 0.69% of the GDP. So roughly around 0.7%. Now the good part is the policy clearly acknowledges this. So at least the first step in solving any problem is being honest about it and acknowledging it. It acknowledges that any country's identity, upliftment, and spiritual or intellectual satisfaction and creativity is also attained in a major way through its history, art, language, and culture. So scientific research, of course, is there. Apart from that, these aspects also. So the policy envisions the establishment of a national research foundation. Now, the overarching goal of NRF will be to enable a culture of research in our universities. Now, NRF will competitively fund research in all disciplines. Successful research will be recognized and, where relevant, implemented through close linkage with various government agencies, industry, private, or philanthropic organizations. Thus, promoting and celebrating a culture of innovation and thought leadership in education, technology is a need of the hour. Another very important aspect when it comes to encouraging research, I think very, very important aspect is intellectual property rights should be fast-tracked. So be it any individual or an organization who is putting in significant amount of resources into research, their legal rights need to be adequately protected. So intellectual property laws are very important. If we really want to motivate and encourage researchers that their hard work will not go in vain. Now, the last part of my deliberation, coming to the role of schools, which I guess is the most important part. I think Burrett sir emphasized on some very, very interesting and important aspects. And very nicely he put them together. And I agree that there's a dire need. Now, when we discuss about research, I guess as far as schools are concerned, the way I'll describe it is as developing creative thinking. Because see, creative thinking is really important, right? We tend to work on a particular solution. We tend to work towards a need gap only when we are ready to put on our caps and think creatively. Thus, there's a dire need to increase students' creative thinking capacities through instruction and practice for the betterment of the nation. Now, creative or innovative thinking is the kind of thinking that leads to new insights, novel approaches, fresh perspectives, and whole new ways of understanding and conceiving of things. Creative thinking helps to maintain students' motivation and passion for in-depth learning. Now, I believe creative thinking is considered to be now there's a debate, like, so is creative thinking a natural ability or can it actually be nurtured, can it be developed? Now, I was going through some literature on this, some very interesting literature, some research materials, and I saw a very, very nicely, this has been put together and explained by International Center for Studies in Creativity. And according to them, creative thinking is an effective resource that resides in all people and within all organizations. So they say that there are more than 30 years of research that they have done in this particular area to determine whether it's natural or can it be developed, has conclusively demonstrated that creative thinking can be nurtured and enhanced through the use of deliberate techniques and strategies. So that shows that, you know, there's opportunity, there's talent in every child, which can be nurtured. Creative thinking involves the skills like flexibility, originality, fluency, elaboration, brainstorming, modification, imagery, associated thinking, attribute listening, you know, things like metaphorical thinking and force relationships. The aim of creative thinking is to stimulate curiosity and promote divergence. So now today, if you look at importance of creative thinking in education, we really live in a world which is changing faster than ever before and facing challenges that are actually unprecedented. These sort of challenges require innovative ideas and approaches. Now, such ideas and approaches can only be brought together by creative talents. Now, many educators believe that specific knowledge, now this is another thing which we have discussed in this forum several times, that many educators believe that specific knowledge, domain knowledge, will not be as important to tomorrow's workers and citizens as the ability to learn and make sense of new information. So what we were discussing earlier. So rote learning, memorizing something vis-a-vis application of knowledge. So we are very clear that in today's age, it's not only about being able to memorize and retain information, but if you're given a case study, if you're given a problem, and if you're given certain information, to be able to apply your knowledge and solve it. Now, educational institutions need people who can be innovative, who can think differently in a nutshell. So I believe education has three main roles, right? Economic, cultural, and individual. When these three roles are examined through the lens of creative thinking, then it becomes difficult to separate them. For example, in the field of economy, business leaders constantly promote the desire to hire creative, innovative employees who can work in teams and communicate well. Because when we actually face a problem in business, no book, no textbook in this world will give you a ready-made solution, right? You really think out of the box, whether that be in terms of developing a new strategy, like Shubhayu mentioned at the initial phase, that when we went through different contents and we were trying to figure out that what actually works, how do we actually make a difference? Again, that was business. Coming to culture. In culture, again, we need people with innovative ideas as the world is becoming more connected, complicated, and challenging. Finding ways to live together is becoming more interdependent and dynamic. Again, coming to creativity in education. Now, creativity in education means students have opportunities to develop the key skills of collaboration. Without these skills, cultural education becomes more difficult to achieve. Even if you look at it from the individual side, education is also about helping people find their own course in life. Now, what is the aim of education, right? It to act as an enabler. We help students, we help children to find their own course in life. It is about helping them find what has value and meaning. Now, we saw what the Center for International Studies says, that everyone has talents. Everyone has talents. Thus, inspiration and skill education should allow this to flourish. One most important attitude, creative thinking, is to be developed among the students for making connections and developing relationships. Now, looking at some material around the world with regard to strategies for developing creative thinking. So we understand the theory, right? How do we actually put it into practice? Now, today we have a great esteemed panel here. I look forward to their deliberation with regard to this particular aspect, that how do we actually implement it in classroom? So we have such an experienced panel, and also Burrett also mentioned certain aspects, certain key points, which I guess are very important. I just highlight few key aspects on this with regard to strategies for developing creative thinking. I just touch upon them, and I'm sure during the course of panel discussion, many new points will come up, interesting points will come up. For instance, brainstorming. I believe, in a classroom setting, to develop creative thinking, I believe brainstorming is a very important part, regardless of subject. Making students think about what they'll be doing, learning or reading, before actually starting any activity. Again, classifying and categorizing. Help students to think divergently, and create something new and innovative. Activities like comparing and contrasting, activities like making connection. For instance, asking students to make a connection with a real life situation and identify patterns. Very important, not only for school, but also for B schools, management schools. Again, group opportunities. I think Burrett mentioned that working together in groups, fantastic, very, very important. So, as he rightly mentioned, so even furnitures in today's schools have changed. Considering the fact that children really learn very well in groups. Activities like incubation, process in which individuals work on a problem for a while, and if they're not able to solve it, they go back, study further, and come back. Between these attempts, they learn new information or discover a key insight that helps them to solve a problem. I read about a very interesting concept called Just Imagine games. Games that are organized in educational settings around the world that permit students to take off on a flight of imagination and help them to retrieve information from memory, compare and contrast ideas, and make connections between different bits of information. Again, activities like modeling creativity or role model, very powerful way to develop creative thinking. Like students memorize such persons whose thought and action serve as role model, identifying a role model. It helps in developing creative behavior. Students, they watch their role models and develop creative potential that already exists in them. Like, for instance, as far as schools are concerned, undoubtedly, teachers serve as role models. We all remember that in our school days, we really used to look up to our teachers as a role model. And I'm sure our esteemed educators in this forum were doing a great job. And I'm sure our parents today will also deliberate on these aspects. So I believe, apart from parents, students really look up to teachers as role models. Again, defining and redefining problems. So when it comes to creative thinking, if, for example, if a student is given the flexibility to choose their own topic for paper presentation, own ways of solving problem, freedom to choose a topic for doing a project report, then creative potentials are automatically developed. Sometimes they may make mistakes, but learning to recognize a mistake is an important part of creativity. Encouraging idea generation. Generating ideas must be done in such an environment that is relatively free of criticism, because the moment you generate an idea, a student should not have the baggage. Students should not be apprehensive that, okay, he or she will be severely criticized. See, I believe main aim of education is to generate numerous unique ideas that enhance the creative thinking ability of student. That is essential for success and progress of the nation. So I believe these are some key points. Coming to recommendations, I'm sure creative thinking can be increased by the use of interdisciplinary learning, students working in teams having different talents, working groups, motivation and interest among students by integrating various activities like games, play. Definitely activities encourage creative thinking, there's no doubt about it. Now, project-based learning, problem-based learning. Again, so various research, now I was going to another very important, interesting research, I'll say. I went through research that says that 57% of professionals, now these professionals are across sectors, across industry verticals, 57% of professionals believe creativity would be important to their career when they were in college. So when you are in college, if you're asked, is creativity going to be important to you in your career? Only 57% said yes. But people who are already in the middle of their career, people who have already spent a decade or more in their professional career, when they are asked the same question, that do you think creativity is important? Around 80% of respondents said, yes, creativity is critical to my career. So you understand the shift, right? So the main goal of education is to teach and nurture. So be it any profession, so whether it be future scientists, artists, engineers, entrepreneurs, so nurturing creative potential, which actually lays the foundation. So whether it be art, science, philosophy, technology. So as far as betterment of a nation is concerned, productive human beings are required in every sphere, whether it be economic, cultural, technological, any sphere. And that can only be achieved to nurturing creative potential. Thus, in a nutshell, education at all levels, I think one of the key responsibilities is to nurture creative potential among students. So I believe these are a few points that I wanted to make. I really look forward to the deliberation from our esteemed panel today. I thank you all for giving me a patient hearing. Over to you, Shubhay.
Thank you, Achin. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. I think this was a great way of looking at the entire topic of research, especially the NEP aspect of it. Let us now see what our esteemed panelists are going to say about it. Ladies and gentlemen, we, like every other week, have a stellar panel in front of you. Let me introduce them one by one before I start the discussion. We are very privileged to have with us Ms. Swati Ahmed. She's an educationist, a counselor, a mentor, a CEO, and a principal. Her belief is that education is not preparation for life, but education is life itself. She considers life to be a roller coaster of vivid experiences that enable children, as well as educationists themselves, to learn and nurture from them in order to make the most of the learning cycle that is called life. Hence, she aspires to a teaching environment where she gets to work with these experiences for the students to mold themselves into brighter, better citizens of the tomorrowland. She has been a senior professional with a total of 30 years of experience in administration and teaching, covering Chhattisgarh State Board, ICSC, IGCSE, and CBSE syllabi. She has achieved significant results in academics, sports, co-curricular, and extracurricular activities, branding, marketing and admission, campaigning in the institutions where she has worked. She has received various recognitions and awards. I will just name a few. She has been honored by Board of Secondary Education Chhattisgarh for 100% result in senior and senior secondary exams consecutively for 2 years. Received Best Innovative School Award 2016 from Government of Chhattisgarh. Received Chhattisgarh Patrika Award, the Best Principal Award 2016-17, 2017-18 by Lions Club and Rotary Club, Best Principal Award 2019-20 by NOF. She has worked with the ABVP for Women's Empowerment and has been invited as a guest speaker for the program conducted by Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Sangh on women's empowerment that was held across India in 2018. She has visited Brazil and Bali as part of exchange programs in education. Ma'am, we are privileged to have you with us. Thank you so much for being here. We also have with us Mrs. Anjali Razdan, who holds a Master's in Botany from the University of Bombay with a postgraduate diploma in higher education and Bachelor of Education. With a span of 40 years in education, she began her career in 1979 as a lecturer of biology for undergraduates at Parla College, Mumbai in India. She later moved to Kolkata and served as principal of Birla Schools and founder principal of Lakshmipat Singhania Academy. And she worked in the city for 21 years before moving on to Hyderabad. She served as the principal of Jubilee Hills Public School, Indus Universal School, and AMSP Obul Reddy Public School in Hyderabad, where she retired in 2019. She also served as the vice chairperson of the CBSE Hyderabad Sahodaya Schools Complex from 2016 to 2018. She was the principal and director academics at the Obul Reddy Public School, which I mentioned earlier. She is presently the director academics at Solan Public School in Solan, Himachal Pradesh. She has conducted and attended several in-service trainings, workshops, various such programs. She has been a mentor and a certified trainer and resource person of the Center of Excellence CBSE and various other national and international organizations. She has been presiding as a panelist on several discussions on 21st century education, STEM and STEAM education, value education impacting students, psychology and career counseling, organized by the Hindu, TOI, SAP, etc. She is a member of Advisory Committee on Educational Reforms and Implementation Policy Proposal of CBSE in Kolkata in the year 2005. She has been a columnist in leading newspaper Hans India. She's also won various awards. I will just name a few. The B.K. Birla Award for Outstanding Achievement in the Field of Education, the Bharat Nirman Award for Outstanding Contribution to Education, Principal of the Year Award by Lions Club and Rotary Clubs at Kolkata in 1999, 2003, and 2004, the Rank and Bolt Award by Air India, and she's received letters of appreciation for outstanding contribution in education from late B.K. Birla and Sarala Birla. She's also won the Intel Award for outstanding contribution to technology usage in schools in the year 2002. She's also visited various countries for her connection with education. She's visited Singapore, Bangkok, Pattaya, Philippines, Sri Lanka, Canada, Hong Kong, Macau, Dubai, Japan, various cities in Spain and the United States during her illustrious career journey. During this journey, she's also groomed some of the best sports personalities, world number 3 in squash Gaurav Ghoshal, film personalities like Madhuri Dixit, and many well-known doctors, engineers, pilots, defense personnel, and successful entrepreneurs under her tutelage. Ma'am, it's an absolute privilege to have you on the platform. Thank you so much for making the time. We also have with us Dr. Thakur Mulchandani, an academically enriched educationist with rich academic and administrative experience, offering an illustrious career spanning 28 years with reputed education institutions. He is an accomplished trainer and a mentor with a sound track record of creative scholastic achievements. He has worked with Maharashtra State Board as an examiner for 9 years, moderator for 7 years, and chief moderator for 1 year for geometry subject. His superior record of promoting the welfare of the institution by enhancing staff efficiency and productivity through efficient administration, effective motivation, guidance, and incentives have been well known. He substantially improved work quality in the institutions where he worked while reducing staff and operational expenses and developed various methods for having proper checks and balances. He was the convener of the UAE Gulf Sahodaya during the academic year 2017-18. He has worked with the Ryan Group of Schools in Mumbai for 16 years and Rahul Group of Schools for 5 years, and is currently working in Sunrise School Abu Dhabi, UAE from 2013 as school director and principal. Sir, privileged to have you with us. Thank you so much for being here. I will now stop the screen share, switch on the camera so that we can all see each other. To all the teachers again, thank you so much for making the time to be here today. I will first go around the table once for your opening remarks on the topic today, and then come to more specific questions that I have for you. Ms. Ahmed, if we may start with you.
Sure. Good evening, members on board. Good evening, viewers, and Happy New Year 2021. There is no discovery without a search, and there is no rediscovery without a research. Every discovery man has ever made has always been concealed. It takes searches and researches to unveil them. That's what makes an insightful leader. Research corrects perception as well as expands them. Very rightly quoted by Phillip sir now in the same session, when he said that the transformation has been taken in the classrooms. The furnitures have got changed. We have now light furniture. So this is the result that has changed our perception, given us innovative thoughts, and has expanded us. Research gathers information on subjects and phenomena that we lack or have little knowledge about. It develops and evaluates concepts, practices, and theories. Research provides hard facts which serve as base for planning, decision making, project implementation, as well as evaluation. As an educator, we are constantly looking out for strategies to implement in our teaching process to help foster positive outcomes for our students. The best way is to bring them out of their shells. Let them experience, let them explore. Increasingly popular strategy that has less to do with lesson plans and curriculum and more to do with teachers' overall approach towards students' interaction and instructions. This teaching strategy can lead to a greater success in our small classrooms. There are different types of students we experience in our classrooms. Some face challenges differently than others. Some act shy at the obstacles, whereas some welcome challenges as opportunities. What successful people know is that the path to success is really going to be challenging. You will have to dig in. You have to develop grit and persistence. And you need to believe that you are capable and not letting anything hold you back. Even neuroscience determines that our brains are much more malleable than it was believed once. Neural networks can grow new connections, strengthen the existing ones, and even speed up the transmission of impulses. Such findings suggest that through strategies like asking questions or practicing difficult tasks, we can increase our neural growth. When we are dedicated and genuinely interested to help our students, we must bring research technique into our teaching learning process to bring these students out of their comfort zone. Let them explore, make them confident to achieve success, to handle failures, and to embrace challenges. When students are trained in this way, they persist when there are setbacks. They see efforts as part of success. They learn from their set feedbacks. They find aspiration in the success of others too. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Mrs. Razdan, ma'am, if we may come to you next.
Yeah, hi Jubayu. Hello everybody,
Hello.
all panelists. Very happy New Year to all of you to begin with. I don't know what to say because such esteemed panelists have said so much of things that I'm lost for words. Mr. Bhattacharya explained everything. I think Mr. Phillip, put up the whole things. And right now, Swati madam. Okay, I'm not a talker. What I'm going to do is I'm a doer. And that's my modus operandi of when it comes to defining research. So what in my concept of research is, let's go to the present trend, and that's, I'm going to just state in a few minutes, is that we are in the COVID-19 20 situation right now, right? And if there was nobody who thought about how to make a vaccine, how to counteract this problem of this huge pandemic, I guess then all of us would suffer for a couple of years, maybe even perish in the process. So it is this thing, that the thought that let's diverge and find out what exactly is causing it, how can we prevent it, and how can we even control it, is research. That's the real thing, very tangible thing which anybody can understand. I do not know who the audience are right now, but I presume they are a mixture of teachers and children, and of course parents. So maybe it's
Ma'am,
right.
it would be, sorry to interrupt, ma'am. It would be mostly teachers and principals.
Teachers and principals, fantastic. So I begin with research as this way. There was this man with a little story. All right, let's walk the talk. There was this man, and it was one wanting to know, a lot of very curious man, and one day he was sitting under a tree, and like all of us sit many years ago, and while he was sitting under the tree and he was just browsing and thinking, one apple fell down. He was obviously under an apple tree. It fell down on his head, and bong, what would we have done if we were not research oriented? We would have taken that apple, we would have either eaten it up and then enjoyed that lovely apple and then walked on. But this man did not eat that apple. This man took it in his hand, looked up at the tree, and then he realized and thought, why did it fall down on my head? Why did it not go up? Why did it not go in any other direction? And why did exactly it had to fall here on my head? Then he looked, it was exactly over his head. So it had the no other place. The bottom line is that this man later on started thinking and thinking. I do not know whether he ate that apple or not ultimately, but he started thinking and thinking and thinking. And ultimately, he propounded the theory of that everything falls down, nothing goes up, because there's something down called gravity. And there's this gravitational pull that brings everything down. Now, had this man, not thought about all these things, we would never know the Newton's theory of gravitation. We'd never have gone to the moon. I think Mr. Bhattacharya talked so much about, going there and all. We would have done none of those things. And so was Einstein. And so many people who kind of, thought over something. Why? The biggest thing is why. So the very opening lines, if you're saying this should be opening lines, because we're going to deliberate more later on. So the opening lines of this is, research is a big why. And research is a backbone of a lot of whys. And I think as we Indians, people who are living on this planet, COVID-19 has brought us together to think of this big why. It has actually brought us together, not only in terms of thinking why, but then also thinking that, and discovering, of course, which is research again, that all of us are alike in terms of the problems, in terms of how we face the solutions, in terms of the spikes, in terms of the reductions, in terms of using the mask, in terms of whatever else. That's all research. Had we never thought of those things, we would never be able to know what exactly is going to happen. So basically, research is the mother of all any thinking process, I would say. And how do we do it? What do we do it? How do we tell the teachers to do it? I think we should always walk the talk. I think that probably will be, as in when you're going to ask maybe more questions, there's no point telling everything right now. So I think we'll wait for that time. So by and large, my fundamental opening lines is, research is the backbone of any creative thinking. Thank you.
Wonderful, ma'am. Thank you so much for that. Dr. Mulchandani, if we may come to you next.
Yes.
I know sir wanted to present. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Good evening to everyone, to the esteemed panelists. Good evening to all the audience. Good evening to the team from Notebook. Have you given me the share screen option, sir, Mr. Roy?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I'll be basically sharing a few points which are close to my heart. And this is how I look at it, as to how do we nurture the explorers. And for me, the explorers is nobody but the students, okay? Since we all are here because of the students, I always tell my teachers, we are there because of the students. The students are not there because of us. They have a lot of options, a lot of schools to go into and look out for the education. So talking of nurturing explorers, the topic for the evening, starting with it straight away, we have seen that there are so many 21st century skills, and nurturing student creativity is number 2. Okay, problem solving is the first. Okay, and it's our duty as teachers, educators, to see that children are getting these skills and they're there to serve the world. Very important. So when it comes to nurturing students, it's a process. It has to be taught. It has to be learned. Very, very important. I believe in that very fundamentally. And it's a, a whole brain exercise. Okay. Students have a lot of creativity, abilities, plans, and I mean, every child is a unique according to me. Every child, okay? No children can be the same. We have children in 3 different categories. I'll be talking about that towards the end of my presentation. And why nurturing creativity becomes important, because we are living in a global workplace where things have changed drastically, especially looking at the last 1 year, right from March 2020. And I don't know how many more years we are going to be at the mercy of technology for teaching, learning. Now, very important, I would like to start with a very famous example is, when you look at nurturing students, it's become more important and imminent because of the rise of the app economy. I mean, you can see apps are a household thing, millions of jobs, opportunities, teaching, learning environment, work environment has been created because of apps. I'm sure it was first created in 2008. Nobody knew before that what is an app. Or I'm sure nobody even imagined that there would be jobs like app developers, app managers, and so many things coming up. So technology has changed, and we are responsible to nurture in our children the best of talents and the best of initiatives. So I'm just talking about app as an example. Okay, this is a job which did not exist a few years ago. 2008 was the first time when Apple introduced its app store, and then it's become a craze. We have hundreds and hundreds and thousands of apps today all over the world, which are the, you can say, a boon for the masses. So students have to think in a very divergent and creative way. We are now totally in a digitalized world, whether it's our educational boards or the learning environment. It's absolutely important to think in a very divergent and creative way in this digital and non-digital environment. So let's try to understand, how we are going to live in this digital world, or ever-growing digital world, or ever-changing world, especially the last 1 year, the pandemic, which has really brought massive, sweeping changes around us. Now, how can you nurture students' creativity? I'll be just talking 8 points and closing. Very important is keeping the students' interest. Believe me, trust me. I have been saying this always. The more a teacher does chapar means talk, the lesser is going to be a student's interest in the class. I always tell my teachers, children are not there to see your knowledge. Children are not there to hear your chapar. They are there to learn. And learning happens only when there is an interest created in the learning journey. You have to begin your class keeping in mind the learning objectives. What sort of students am I having? How the learning is going to take place beyond the textbook. How I'm going to involve the learners. How I'm going to measure the impact. And most important, flawless lesson delivery. Trust me, children are not there to listen to you and your talks. They're there to learn something new, something out of the textbooks, something beyond their thinking capacities. The second is giving them space. Very, very important. You don't give space to children, they're not going to learn. Okay, they're not going to learn. There needs to be a space. I'm talking of the learning space in the classroom, which helps them to build better relations and communication. Very, very important. Very important. We have seen many schools where learning spaces are always it's an area of concern, but definitely a learning environment, a learning space in the class creates a very important impact in nurturing students' creativity. Involve others. Involving others means the parents of the children. Very important. We need to involve them. We need to give parents a view of what the children are learning. Ownership of learning is very, very important. Keep it real, most important. Your learning has to be real. That's how you're trying to nurture the students' creativity. Okay, project-based learning, inquiry learning, all these are different techniques where you can keep children engaged in the classroom environment in a very productive and a creative way. Never stop dreaming. This is one thing I tell my children. Everything is achievable. Nothing is impossible. No doubt we have 3 different sets of students in our class, but everybody has a right to dream. Everybody has a right to be unique. Everybody has a right to be different. Everybody has a right to be creative. Everybody has a right to march ahead in the journey of learning. Using different classroom engagement strategies, I need not talk much about it. This slide is enough to tell you everything. These are some of the engagement strategies which I have tried to put it down, around 20 of them. And these engagement strategies will definitely nurture our children in a very big way to get involved in the teaching learning process in a very, very big way. The next is taking risk. Very important. Teach children how to take risk. Risk taking is very, very important. Very important. Because if you are going to survive and fight it out in this world, the digital world, innovative world, creative world, taking risk is very important. We must teach our children how to take risk and march on. Failing is not one thing. Success is not everything, but they must take risk to bring up their talents and creativity. And last, very, very important factor, we have to give freedom to children to design their learning. This is what I'm trying to talk about, gamification. Schools cannot just rely on the classroom techniques. They have to go beyond this. This generation Z is not the one going to listen to us. They believe in designing, shaping, bringing about their own learning. And virtual reality, I'm sure all my esteemed panelists and the audience will agree with me. We have to do things beyond the classroom. Just the teacher's talk is not relevant and important. And in end, as I was trying to talk about the 3 types of learners, we have 3 types of learners in our class. The gifted, the children who are, coming in category 1, they know everything, sometimes more than the teacher. I call them as the high achievers. Then you have the middle achievers, the average student. Then you have the low achievers who, are needing that interest in the classrooms. So you have the high achievers, middle achievers, and the low achievers. Whatever the teacher does for the high achievers is always going to be less. But what a teacher can do for the middle and the low achievers is something which pays off as a blessing, Trust me, all the members, the more you do for your middle and the low achievers, that's where learning actually happens. If you're doing something for your high achievers, I don't see it as a success. I don't see it as something sensational. I don't see something it as an achievement. But when you do something for your low achievers and middle achievers and try to push them up into the learning process, into the learning space, into the learning journey, there lies the charm and glory of teaching. And these are my true explorers, as I have been doing for the last 28 years, teaching a subject which is so much scary. I mean, I have taught it 21 years in Mumbai, not much in Abu Dhabi, because here we are not allowed to teach, as we have a lot of other roles and responsibilities. But pushing up the low and the middle achievers to a level of success, to a level of attainment, to a level of achievement is where we as educators stand as a very important role in nurturing them and bringing them up for the 21st century. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. I think puts a great structure for the questions that are to follow. My first question, and Mrs. Razdan, if you may start with you. Do you think, given your vast experience across so many institutions, does our education system do enough to encourage young students? I'm not talking about the postgraduate and the undergraduate degrees, but in young students do we do enough to encourage them to take up research as an activity?
Okay, so when you mean young, I believe you mean
School
grade
students now?
1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, or something like that, or you mean the grade 9, 10, 11, 12ers? Whom do
Let's say
you
up to grade 9, class 1 to 8.
up to grade 9? Okay, so I'll just your question will be with another question, and that's an analogy we just analyzed. Is that the little ones, the children, as the younger they are, I think that they're most creative, and in our education system at the moment, and it's going to change, is that we provide the answers. We don't provide, we just don't give just a question, but we even give an answer with that in the classroom. So when a child is basically asked, what is A for? Even if I ask this audience right now, A, B, C, D, right? We all know A, B, C, D. So what is A for? The first thing that's coming to your mind is, what is it? Apple?
Apple?
Yeah, because teacher has taught us apple. You see, the teacher has given us the question, the teacher has given us the answer, and thou shalt not think otherwise. So when a child will say it's astronaut, it could be whatever else. Why not? But no, A is for apple. That's because I told you so, and better revise. Then there's a parent, another villain on the other side, which if there's everything else left of the child, which is taken out, and then there's a parent the other side saying, okay, fine. Now you start memorizing this A is for apple, A is for apple, so that till the time you're in 60s and 80s, you still remember A is apple. What does this tell you? This tells you that the children come basically to school when they're very young. They have amazing amount of creativity, amazing amount. And then they think differently. But then the way we treat them at the school is not even the school's fault, but I think the fault of the system. It's not the fault of the person per se. Is that we make them very mechanical. We make them robots. Think like this, and you cannot think any otherwise. Otherwise, because if you think any otherwise, I as a teacher may not know the any otherwise. You see, I may not know the answer that you know, so therefore I will not accept that. So they say, research says that the children, when they are younger, the more younger they are, they got 99%. I could be even incorrect, maybe I'm not too fabulous in saying 100% of the kids actually have 100% creativity when they are in that schooling stage. 100%. And we're talking about any child for that matter. It's up to the teacher to take this out and draw it out. But once they are up to the age of, I think, 22, I'm told, this is what research says, 98% children cannot think. It's gone. Only 2% remain creative. Maybe they're very lucky because either it's in their genes or the environment was such. So I don't know whether this answers your question. That what was your question basically? I hope it answered it. What was the question?
Yes, ma'am. We were trying to figure out if the school system encourages
School system.
students to
So
take
it does. So what do you think it does? It does a lot of things. It gives a lot of information. A lot of books are there with a lot of definitions. Oh, wow. And we can say it by heart. Page number 32, line number 2 is having the answers. But is that what is creativity? And basically creativity leads to research. So I guess we have to give a little hand, and that I think will come in your later questions. I don't know. But thank God we have something called National Education Policy 2019, which is addressing all these small little gaps that we have in our system of education. It is now focusing on complete holistic learning, and we have miles to go when it goes into the minds of a teacher to say, how do I teach in the way the child wants to learn, using multiple intelligences, using amazing concepts where they will do, why are we in a hurry to cover the lessons, to cover the syllabus or the curriculum? We should be basically uncovering it. But then no, we are covering it, and we are in a massive hurry to cover it. So I guess this is the fundamental one aspect which we say, give that liberty to the person there. But problem is that as you're growing up, as you're older, as an adult, you can't change so much. So to change a teacher's mindset, to change an adult mindset is a much bigger problem than to kind of get on to the little kids. The little kids, I mean, even up to grade 12, because their mindset changing is very quick. And and in today's 21st century, oh my God, they will teach you a lesson or two in the rest of the technology, which is the backbone of 21st century. And who are we talking about? The old-fashioned, we teachers who have been brought up and born in what is the computer, which used to be such a big box. And we're teaching these kids who are actually, in the flow of 21st century tools. So I guess the answer lies there. We need to change our mindset. And I guess that eventually, and accept the kids as they are the future people of, the future citizens. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, ma'am, wonderfully. Ms. Ahmed, if I may come to you next. You have taught across Chhattisgarh State Board schools, IGCSE schools, ICSE schools. Do you see a degree of difference in which students have a natural knack for research or are encouraged to take up research? Ma'am, I think you're on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
The present scenario in the country is such that we do not treat all the jobs equally. We do not even treat all the degrees equally. Half of the country does not even have access to the proper education, and very small fraction reaches university. Even the primary education is very rare to every family in the rural areas. Unless you are too rich to formal education does not matter for you, or you are too poor that you can't afford education. You can't be just an athlete, singer, painter, bearing just handful of experiences. You have to be an engineer or a medical degree holder before pursuing what you basically want to do in life. You have to have above 80% percentage plus. Otherwise, only an art stream is an open door thing for you to take admission. This all shows that we have herd mentality, prejudice that persists in society about subjects and the professions. Everything is about rote memorizing, leading to behavior that encourages cramming and forgetting, rather lifelong learning. Standardized testing determines everything, and aptitude of students is not recognized outside the format because we have a fixed format for everything. Lack of diversity in the subjects that we choose. We cannot take maths and German together. We do not give that kind of flexibility to the students to choose. Extreme pressure from the parents, from the society to use education for financial security. Social pressure to get into right school and to use this qualification for good job, marriage prospects, or in general success in your life. There is very little incentive to take risk, what we call to become a researcher. Very little chances to take risk or to follow your own interests or encourage creativity that we are talking about. This creativity basically should be inculcated into a child's nature, I suppose, so that in duration of time, these children come up as researchers. Reservation system, management quota system, government control of education, and government monopoly of education, right to education act. Education sector is close to for-profit organizations, and we need to have solution for all these problems that we are facing in our fixed mindset. So the foremost thing is that we need to come out of this fixed mindset. And then, as ma'am had been talking right now, that in the junior level, the best critical thinking and creative thinking can be nurtured over there. From there, we can bring up to the middle school and the 9 to 12 graders. And I think if we inculcate this in our students as we have as support now and EP 2020, that is taking care of all these domains, I think we can bring up researchers. But if I talk about the degree of a researcher as compared to the other IITians or some other great people, you can again see that people are going to value you as per the work that you do or the wages that you make. Means you will not be given that respect in today's times. Since we are the educators, we are talking about researches in education, research in the society, bringing this feeling, bringing this thinking in our young minds. But right now, if you see the scenario, there is a wide difference in other professions as well and in the researcher's profession. And people really do not value it unless they know that what is your position and how much do you make. Over to you, sir.
Wonderful, ma'am. Very interesting perspective there. I will now go across to Dr. Mulchandani. Razdan ma'am just said that parents play a pivotal role in the whole mindset, and I'm sure where Swati ma'am is also coming from is the parents need to feel secure in the choices that they are perhaps making for their children. What do you think the role of the parents and the teachers, especially given the new NEP? Do you think this needs to change if we have to develop more researchers at a younger level?
Uh, yeah, I mean, you have asked something which is close to my heart. I always tell our parents, we give them the stream selection option when the children are in grade 10, somewhere towards October and November. And the sad part is, 90% of the parents want the children to take science, which I don't know. I sometimes get upset, Why not commerce? Why not arts? I tell the parents, I'm myself a BCom graduate. Okay. Science is not everything and anything in the world. You need not be a science graduate and then look for engineering and doctorate and all those plans, what parents have in the mind. So looking at the new NEP policy, I think we need to orient our parents that each and every stream is important, whether it is science, arts, or commerce. And coming to your connection of research, as both the other panelists have said, I think they have said everything and left little for me to speak. This is one field which is not developed in India because of, I could say, the non-importance, less importance, less, you could say, role title attached to it. Like a teacher has a role title, a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, a professor, or an astronaut, or a scientist. I mean, name it, I'm just giving you few professions. But researcher has been one such profession which even, I'm not here to criticize, even NEP has not gone into details of that. But we need to explain and, orient our parents, what is the importance of this field, how it has to be looked into, and why we need more researchers in these times where things have changed. What we were 1 year ago, I'm not just trying to put the pandemic in the highlight, but it has shook more than 220 countries of the world. I don't think the world has more than those countries, maybe. And it has changed our mindset. Like Mrs. Razdan said, our teachers may not be knowing even how to operate the IT resources, the IT equipments, but pandemic has forced them because of the online classes. That goes for all of us, whether it's Abu Dhabi or it's India or any part of the world. And we have teachers who have been with us from 15, 20, 30 years. So same way, we need to change the mindset of the parents, talk to them. And at the same time, the school is equally important to incorporate research as one of the teaching learning elements in its teaching learning processes. Just going by notebook, just learning from the notebook, rote learning, by hearting is not what is going to help out. Children should be made to develop their own answers, write their own answers, be original, not pit pat or tota part from textbook, as some of the teachers like. I always tell my teachers, if the child is not written from the textbook, but if the answer is in his or her words, assess it, give marks. That's what every board says. Every board, whether CBSE, IGSE, state boards, or any board. So research has to become one of the important tools of the teaching learning process. Teachers have to change their mindset. They have to change the mindset of children. Automatically, the parents will understand how the role of a researcher is important. But unfortunately, this remains one field which has been neglected. I don't see much of it being covered in the NEP, only a few aspects of it. But we as teachers, we as educators can always take a different look and a different approach and a different mindset and try to incorporate it among our students, our teachers, and ultimately informing the parents how the role of a researcher is very important and vital for the development and growth of education, not only the development and growth of education, but the development of any economy for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Just to clarify, when you said reading from the notebook, you meant the physical notebook, not the app notebook, right?
Not the app notebook, the physical
thank you.
notebook and textbook.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that to the wider audience out there.
No, because we always go for rote learning, learn from the textbook. Okay, what is Ohm's law? What is the law of demand? Or, I mean, just to name a few, I mean, it's not necessary you write what is written in the textbooks. You have to be something in your own way. As long as, the aspects of the question are covered, that's important. I always tell my teachers, you deduct marks. If parents come to me, I will be a demon because I want the children to succeed. And once more, very important thing, exams are not everything and the end of world. I may just get 20 out of 100. There may be another child who's getting 80 out of 100. There may be another child who's getting 60 out of 100. But that does not mean the 80 out of 100 child is a scholar. And I'm 20 out of 100, so I'm a slow learner. So, marks is not everything and the end of the life. There are so many things to follow. Take the example of Bill Gates. See his educational level, okay? He may not be as qualified as, we 3-4 principals who are there on this panel, but today he is one of the richest men in the world. So I'm just giving a simple example to show, how academics and studies is not everything. There are a lot of other things to come up in life. I can tell you my personal example. My teachers used to say, you will not be a teacher. I don't want to name the school. And this was right from grade 4 till grade 10. But I told my teachers, I will be a teacher one day. I will be a teacher one day. Only y'all cannot teach. I will be a teacher. And here am I, 28 years into the teaching profession, almost 29 years completing in this March. And I visited my school when I became a teacher. They were shocked. I mean, I was a ranker. I was very naughty, but I didn't allow my teachers to breathe, because I used to ask a lot of questions. Not to annoy them or irritate them or pull them, but that's how life is all about. A classroom without noise is a classroom which is dull, dead, void, boring. If there is sound in the class, does not mean the teacher does not have discipline control. It means there is activity, there is learning, there is something happening, that something is learning, what I call it in my language. Thank you.
Wonderful, sir. What I will do now is go across the table and ask you to list out 3 top skills that you think a child should inculcate or the teachers present here should help their children inculcate if they have to go on to become researchers, right? We were looking for 3 skills that, according to you, top the list. Ms. Ahmed, if you may start with you.
Sure, sir. Each one of us is a researcher, and there is a researcher in each one of us. And when we are trying to become researchers, we really have to come out of our shells. Like when I was a small child and my mother was a teacher and she left my sister and me. And my sister told me not to take incense stick. You will burn yourself. But then I wanted to check it and I burnt myself. And then I came to know that yes. So some or the other way, there is a researcher in everyone. We have to come out of our shells and then to experience things, to think differently, because you and me, we both will not have the same thinking for any of the object. Critical thinking, analytical mind, ability to stay calm, because slowly we have to do what we want to do, but then take the feedback, what people are saying, intelligence, curiosity. To nurture your curiosity, you have to experiment things. Quick thinker. Apart from this, commitment, excellent written work. Because when you are trying to become a researcher, you have your people, those who are going to ask you for the reports. And then you ask for the reports, and then you have to present many places. If you are a 12th standard or a college going researcher, then you have to present your degrees. You have to send mails to different universities. You have to send your papers to different universities, different colleges, different competitors and the researchers, those who are with you in the panel. You have to be sympathetic. You have to be You have to have decision making, problem solving. And when we have all these criterias in a person, that actually makes a person fearless. You have no fear of anything. Whether you are succeeding, you do not have to handle that success, nor you have to be worried about failures, because you are ready to do everything. Research is only an experiment. You did something, and this is the feedback that you get. This is my outlook.
Wonderful, ma'am. Although you've gotten me into a little bit of trouble because now you've given more than three. So the others two are going to complain that I did not leave enough for them. Dr. Mulchandani, if
Teacher,
you may come to you next.
teacher.
So
Top
can I
three
have
things
your
that you think.
question again? Can I have your question again? Because
Sure, sir. Top
yeah,
three qualities that teachers should look to inculcate in their children if these children are to go on to become researchers.
uh, I mean, the very first quality would be high level of expectations. You need to have expectation from your children. As I said, we have three sets of students in our class. Having expectations from the gifted is okay. The gifted are going to do it. I mean, they're going to do it even if the teacher doesn't teach. He or she is quiet for those 40, 50, 20 minutes in the class. Having expectations from our children is absolutely important. Secondly, level of transparency. A teacher should be transparent in her classroom. It cannot be that you are good to somebody and bad to somebody else. I'm good to Master A because he's clever, and I'm indifferent and nonchalant to Master B because he is a slow learner. Very important. Level of transparency is very important. This is something which is lacking in our education system to some extent. I'm not saying a large extent, to some extent. So one is high expectation, level of transparency, and the most important is making children test among themselves. Children should have testing element among themselves. We have a lot of formative assessments in our system. Peer testing, self-testing is something which the system has to pick up in a very progressive way. No doubt the teacher is the one who gives the question, but children should test themselves, should test, should discuss, should interact, should deliberate, should collaborate, should speak. And I think these are the three elements, which will definitely allow research to come up as a more better discipline in the society. Thank you.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you so much. Mrs. Razdan, if you may come to you for your top three skills.
Yeah. Well, I'll say number one, humor. Number two, humor. Number three, humor. Okay, that was on a lighter note. Let's tell the kids and the teachers life is not that serious. For God's sake, take it in the light spirit, and let's not make it so cumbersome that there is no creativity left. So okay, so let me put it in the way. The number one would be in the ambit of, let's say there's a big circle within the ambit of humor, which is I think a fantastic skill. The first one to my understanding is empathy. And unless and until they're not empathetic, unless it doesn't dil ko chhuega nahi, unless it doesn't touch them in certain part of their thinking, nothing will propel them towards maybe research or anything else. So empathy. Number two would be, I would suggest, I would think of is a very good listening skills. You have to be a good listener in order to make observations, in order to derive some things. You cannot all the time be a talker and talker and talker and what we are nowadays saying communication skills for the 21st century. So listening, very important. And number three would be, which is a lift up of listening, it's observation. You should be a very good observer, which will relate you to be a good listener, which will relate you to go up higher up and be empathetic and put together against the backdrop of humor, which is definitely a very important point to lessen a lot of things, and critical thinking. So there are four of them. But I think that's my priorities.
Wonderful. I think this has been a fantastic discussion. Unfortunately, we are out of time, and I will now have to hand this back to Achin. But once again, thank you so much for making the time. It's
Thank you.
been an absolutely fantastic journey for us at Notebook to have such brilliant amount of experience on display twice a week, every week. Thank you so much.
Can I button
Yes,
a
ma'am.
little bit for
Absolutely,
you?
ma'am. Yes,
I
ma'am.
love
Absolutely.
the way you subtly stole the propagation of notebook from Mr. Mulchandani. That is creativity, and that is humor, and that is research.
Thank you so much,
Notebook.
sir.
He made notebook in a different context, and you converted into brilliant. So
He's
my
a
Thank
good
you. Thank you so
listener,
much, sir.
a very good listener, a very good listener, Mr. Roy.
Fantastic. That
An
is right.
observer too.
Yes, yes,
Absolutely.
correct,
Absolutely.
correct.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Achin, over to you.
So I think really we had a great session, very interesting and thought-provoking as well. To start with, Burrett sir, thank you so much for giving us a flying start and coming up with some great examples, some activities that you mentioned, emphasis on group activities, couldn't agree more. So really, heartfelt thanks for being our mentor. Swati ma'am, really liked your deliberation, very honest and candid. And the way you acknowledged the challenges on the ground, really fantastic. These are challenges that we live with. And we all aspire to work towards a better tomorrow. Anjali ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Really liked your deliberation, Anjali ma'am. Very elegant and eloquent, if I may put it that way. And really liked two aspects that you mentioned. Life is not that serious. I guess that really sums it up, spirit of the evening. And second, the fact that humor is so important. It's really important. So, Anjali ma'am, thank you again for this. So I think you made some very, very important points, and I'm sure our esteemed educators who are here with us today have taken a note of that. Dr. Mulchandani, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Dr. Mulchandani, I think two very important aspects you highlighted, sir, which I'm sure all of us agree with you today. You really echoed my thoughts when you said a classroom without noise is not a classroom at all. So the way you describe, the kind of hustle and bustle that we look forward to. During last 1 year, during the pandemic, when schools have been closed, I'm sure not only educators, but all of us as part of civil society look forward to schools reopening. We miss that. Children running around in playground, running around in school corridors. So that is life, that is vibrancy. So the way you described it, it really, touched our hearts. Very nice thoughts. Must appreciate that. Again, another very important aspect you highlighted, very important aspect, I'll say, that research as a country, research as a concept, I think undoubtedly NEP 2020 acknowledges the basics, but as a country, we need to do much more. There's no doubt about it. Absolutely no doubt about it. And today, if you look at how economy has evolved through the ages, right? So starting from the process of initially agrarian revolution, moving on to industrial revolution, post-World War, then especially in our country, emergence of service sector, being a major contributor to GDP. And today, with so much of automation, with so much of artificial intelligence, today what we are moving towards undoubtedly is a knowledge economy. And that is where I guess role of research really comes in a very strong way. So couldn't agree with you more on that there's a lot to do in this particular aspect. So I think fantastic session. Thank you all for being a part of this. It has been indeed a real pleasure. I also thank members of our esteemed audience for being with us here today evening. Your encouragement and support has always been our biggest strength to take Together for Education webinar, from session to session. And we look forward to it in the days ahead. Thank you. Thank you. Take care and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for providing.
Wonderful.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Good night.